Another draft physics video presentation. Comments. I'll add something at the end, probably some physics and such. But just diminishing productivity to this activity of engaging human beings. I need a real physicist who's willing to be interrogated. So if anybody can find one, like I said, I'm willing to pay, real money, hundreds of dollars even for somebody who's good enough, for their time to, explain why anyone should believe their crap when it can be evidenced that the theory is weak and thin and not very detailed and, they really don't care about the truth. They just care about telling a story. And, that's about it. I mean, it's kind of obvious, frankly. They're even opposed to drawings, because, drawings, that'll show that it doesn't work. We don't want to do that. And that's the truth of it. You should be able to approximate anything, no matter what somebody says. Sasquatch, I should be able to draw something that looks like a Sasquatch. Really shouldn't be impossible to draw it, some kind of at least symbolic representation, some sort of hieroglyph. So these people are just so full of shit. Anyway, so the Skyram guy hasn't do some comments, but they're just useless comments, frankly. So many of these people just can't get it, the agenda here, just can't stay on the subject. But anyway, so he's totally pussied out of the conversation. Here, in his last paragraph here, he asks, if a professor ever claimed that you can get the pattern in the video by using only 2 point sources, in the case you can draw, then he is obviously wrong. And I pointed out there's no case otherwise. There's no professor doing it right. Okay, so all there is professors doing it wrong, because it doesn't work if they do it right. They can't draw it, because if they draw it, they'd be showing you exactly where the point sources are, which is the surfaces, and that would be proving my point clearly now. But I'd like to see that. So please link me to the video in question. So it's just it's just okay. A professor making a mistake. No, it's not a professor. It's every professor. It's every single video on the subject. And that's what I pointed out. And he doesn't even concede the point. Doesn't even concede that, okay, yeah, this is our foundational experiment and we should get it right, and fudging makes us look bad. I mean, we have to fudge our cornerstone of our wave theory. We have to fudge. Oh, that looks pretty bad when you have to fake it. Now, you won't even concede that there's reason for a reasonable person to be skeptical of a physics that can't get its cornerstone friggin' experiment, can't explain it accurately. So here's another example of the horse shit. Okay, so same bullshit, just the same
slits.
Silly story.
The stripe in the middle is a bright light fringe of 0 order.
Right. So no double slit pattern here at all. Right? They just sit there and put the bars, just make it look like it's, la 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 la, and waves, waves, waves. This proves waves. Blah 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 blah. Same crap. If you did the math accurately again, it's really these little points. And again, look how far away he puts the slits from each other, just so that the diagram looks better. And then he shoots particles, he shoots them all straight. Oh, there's no way a particle could possibly hit an electron and be deflected. That never happens in reality. I mean, it's just such obvious propaganda. It's not even close to reality or the truth or the real facts. What is there to say? But they're just weasels. He types all this crap, causes all this, makes all these assertions. I demonstrate them to be wrong and incorrect. I demonstrate his inferences and his statements to be wrong and incorrect. And he doesn't take any of it back. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't say a motherfucking thing. He just weasels out of the conversation. Ugh, disgusting pieces of shit on this planet. So I'll probably just delete all his comments eventually. I mean, if he's not going to back it up, if he's not going to demonstrate that he still asserts his fucking truth in spite of the evidence, he's not going to do anything. Fuck you. All right, so this idiot. Water. When does he talk about water? Well, Walt Thornhill has whole videos. The electric universe thinks that the planets were all one planet or something. And so they're making this argument the water out on Saturn is the same as the water on Earth because it has some frickin' isotope in it. So yeah, it's all part of their irrelevant, who could give a fuck idiotic theory, idiot. So the fact that, here you are commenting, defending, doing all this mush, with your electric universe, and you haven't even watched the fucking videos. So yes, in that video, I referenced the previous video. You couldn't figure that out, you're too fucking stupid. Just fuck off. Alright. So, Pervax, this is a perfect analogy why ether theories don't work. Edit. The sheer fact that waves always spread in all directions is enough, actually. Well, the fact that they don't really have a good definition of what a wave is, in the sense that they're just saying, well, yeah, we can have laser waves, and somehow, straight line waves. And then, yes, we have the idea of wave, which is you've got a medium that's thick, and it just spreads the motion to all the little bits, that are connected. Would this experiment be fixed or at least significantly improved by bobbing an object inside the slit? I don't really understand why you'd bother. The whole point of the slit is to create the illusion of something bobbing, to create the same kind of effect in terms of giving it a new place to spoil, to take a wave and to give it a new point source. That's the whole point, is the point source part. So the answer to your question is, I don't know, but who cares? It's just, wouldn't be much point in it. You can't bob a photon inside a slit, so it's not relevant really to the point that the fact is the photon experiment is not the stupid water experiment. They're not the same experiment. They both produce a very simple pattern, on, off, on, off, on, off. But obviously the photon does produce a more complex pattern. So the two patterns superimposed on each other. Alright, then this was the 9/11 conspiracy, blah blah, whatever, fine. Yeah, I mean, that's what they sound like. So then the Vince guy made a comment quoting that previous comment instead of replying to it. A desperate science and I are comparing a wave tank MIT. So I already read this one. I'm actually surprised that the YouTube algorithm, right? So that was all that horse shit. And then he complains down here with some other horse shit. You have a lot to say. Make some videos. Yeah, why don't you do the same thing? Let's see. Whereas you have fuck all to say. Alright, so anyway, yeah, this guy claims he's made videos, but he, there's none on this channel, and he doesn't link to his other channel, so fuck it. I mean, it's just this pretending he's made an argument that he isn't making, so fuck off. I mean, it's just, obnoxiously rude. Alright, so this guy, dealing with with scum is tiring. Don't let them get you down. Some of them are so beneath you that giving them attention makes you look like Don Quixote fighting windmills. So is that what when physics argues with flat earthers, or when an atheist argues with a religious kook, they're wasting their time, right? You can't, that's not what you have to do. The fact is everybody's a dumb fuck like you. Alright, so what does he even have this? Blind idiot God. So why do you have a title with God in it? What does that even mean? Are you making satire of some kind? God is a blind idiot. Okay, so you're making an argument of some kind? Well, it makes you look like an idiot, fuckhead. And having a cartoon icon probably doesn't help you any either. It doesn't really make you seem like Mr. Integrity. Okay, thanks for all the content you have put out throughout the years. I don't think you will live to see your theory replace unicorns. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? I should care what you think. I don't think I should care. So anyway, Dave kind of pushes this asshole a little bit, and then he says, "I value his efforts. He is the one belittling himself by squandering them on fools which cannot hear him anyway." And what would your strategy be? You just block, 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 and that's it. You wouldn't respond to anything. You wouldn't try to deal with it. You wouldn't try to in some way negotiate some kind of capacity to have a real argument. I mean, you got to make some effort. Because guess what? That's how all the people are obnoxious, arrogant, underinformed, opinionated jackasses that you're sort of demonstrating. You all have opinions. You have fucking opinions about what my strategy should be and even having the conversation, you jackass. Why should I think your opinion is based on anything but, bullshit? Why should I think you're an expert? That you've been there and done that in any way. Alright, anyway, the less credibility you project. So his argument is as if you argue with the people who are dumb, that means that you're dumb. Makes you look dumb. Blah, 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 blah. Of course it works to people's advantage when they're on top, right? When a gang of bullies gets together and beats up some little kid, they all feel all big. You engage fools with less credibility you project. Okay, the less credibility you project, the more fools start attacking you. So, again, your solution is what? How do I tell the fools from the non-fools anyway? Frankly. The people that have a little knowledge are, the most dangerous, frankly. The real fools, okay, yeah. No point in bothering. It's a positive feedback loop. Says you, whatever. So you're a fool scientist. Fine. You suffer doing it and you are only hurting your cause. That's just stupid. Says you. And again, why don't you show me the brilliant counter strategy? Show me where somebody attacks some basic fundamental meme of human civilization and did so in this perfect manner where he didn't engage anybody and just won. Show me an example somewhere. Fucking asshole. Which translates to even more suffering. Fuck you. Sure, you may say you can easily defeat the fools. Whether I can or cannot. I obviously can't defeat people who are going to say something like, your theory is unfalsifiable, when every theory of, subatomic particles is unfalsifiable. Because there ain't no videotape. All the evidence is always going to be indirect. Shit. Duh. Alright. But their supply is big enough that you can spend your entire life away defending them. Yeah, well, I'm now wasting my time arguing with some fuck about how to argue. You don't see how you're a waste of my fucking time? Oh, shit. And there's still a lot of fools left to defeat. Yeah, we have to defeat people with arguments, is my argument, jackass. You can't do it with wishes. You can't do it by, I'll just get a cardboard box and sit inside of it and go, make the fools go away. That ain't gonna work either, shithead. These people are not even on the subject and are insulting him to help their point. Gary knows this. He says it. Yes, I read their comments and then I delete them and then I block them. Your strategy would just block people. Block, 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 block. And never even acknowledge that somebody made some sort of crack comment. So I should be a hypocrite or something? They're entitled to express their opinion. If they can't do it civilly or they can't do it rational to connect it to the subject, then I have a right to say, fuck this. Okay, I'm just reinforcing idea in his head that it's okay to just ignore these people. Well, that's really not the idea in my head, is it? They're evidence of what's out there. The point is that obviously I don't want to have a conversation with people who don't know shit about physics. Yeah, that's not my interest. I'm not interested in being a cult leader for a bunch of morons who just want a guru of physics. Not my interest. Are people who want to know physics in a day. Well, just give me the short version. Obviously I need to have the argument with people who have some knowledge of the experiments and some knowledge of how well they've been described by physics. Okay, you have no duty to engage them. Well, I think you do have some duty, frankly, and frankly, I think it's part of the argument. It's part of the process is to deal with what people have assumed. Look, there's this Skyrim guy who thinks all the physicists are teaching the two-slit experiment by first showing the right pattern and then explaining how, well, it's really not two waves because that won't work. He thinks the real physicists are doing that. You know, he wasn't an idiot, and he thinks idiotic things. So anyway, fuck you. That's what I'll say. I just removed your comment, but you know, frankly, you weren't on any fucking subject that could matter. Alright, yeah, this Mickey Farley guy is a real peach. You should see the awesome comments he's been leaving on my video. Yes. He's, you know, I mean, he obviously has no, well, he's insane and irrational, frankly. He made a video yesterday, he took it down, so, just some sort of crap about, how I believe in entanglement or something when I've, you know, in multiverses, when obviously I've argued against those silly things. But anyway, too stupid. So how can gravity be magnetism? Gravity doesn't exist. So again, that's just so fucking stupid. You just want to say, I don't even know how somebody could be that stupid. I mean, I know Ken Wheeler says crap like that, but you can't say gravity doesn't exist. Gravity is a word for a phenomenon. The phenomenon is this thing, okay? You can't say the phenomenon doesn't exist. That's just too fucking stupid. Oh, God. This is amazing. Fuck off, idiot. Alright. It seems that maybe he was saying, you know, that's the funny part. He was trying to be sarcastic. He was really saying, well, how can Ken Wheeler say 1 minute gravity doesn't exist and the next minute say it's magnetism? But see, that's the trap. If you can't leave a real comment, like say something, then don't say anything at all. You know, it's the whole do it right or don't do it at all thing. You know, these 4-word comments are just so fucking useless. So he deserved to be blocked for that. Yeah, let's see. I don't know if I want to read all this shit. It seems that mainstream physics, there's a very little interest in truth. Explaining the physical mechanisms, all the interest is in utility and technical applications. I don't know. It's not. These things don't even have utility and technical applications. What's the utility and technical applications of LIGO? There are none. The Higgs boson. There are none. You know, I mean, all of this search for neutrinos, there's not going to be any fucking utility. It's all a pile of shit. Your explanation of the mechanism for the photon in the two-slit experiment may be correct. Well, frankly, you know, I don't need your opinion. I honestly don't know. Well, then you're really not useful, are you? Sorry, but I mean, fuck. Why point out, well, it may be correct? Well, no, I'm saying it's pretty certainly correct because it fits the evidence so much better than their silly theory. Anyway, I honestly don't know. I haven't put the time and effort to claim otherwise, but you'll imply otherwise. That's the problem with your comment. Well, I don't know. Well, you could just say, I'm uninformed, so I probably shouldn't say anything. But I know enough to say it's more logical and elegant than the mainstream non-explanations of particle-wave duality, infinite dimensions, dark matter, or the bending of space, aka bending of nothing. Yes, well, you probably should have just said that and just not qualified your opinion as being meaningless. You know, that's what you're saying. I couldn't be bothered figuring it out, so I'll just express a casual opinion from an ignorant perspective. Well, you know, that's really not terribly useful. I mean, even though you're on my side, it's just, you know, it just doesn't do me any good, thank you. I don't know how any rational person can be satisfied with these physical interpretations of mathematics. Well, I don't even call they're not interpretations of mathematics, they're kind of perversions of mathematics, frankly. I mean, it's overtly wrong to say frequency is momentum. They're two separate words for a reason. They're two separate concepts. It's just wrong. Okay, they admit they've gone into metaphysical, aka religious territory, and that's a failure. I wish they admit it. Then people would say, oh shit, I didn't know. It was like the whole electric universe people. People don't realize it's just a fucking religion. They like electricity and they think electricity is cool. So they fall for this crap, but it's really just a fucking human-centric religious cult. The sad truth is, even if your explanations are correct, the main utility was already achieved with the mathematical formulas enabling predictions of behavior. Well, this is the whole point. It's obviously not doing it very well. It's not predicting the two-slit experiment correctly, so the wave theory isn't working. Lots of this stuff doesn't work. I think it's really important to understand whether, waves are interfering or whether your radio receiver can't tune in a signal. Those are fundamentally important things, I think. And unless your explanations of physical mechanisms can allow for more utilitarian benefit, well, of course, we don't know that yet, right? So obviously I'd say having right answers has more utility than having wrong answers. So, again, this is you qualifying and saying, well, there just doesn't appear to be any value to having the right answer. Well, you don't know yet, do you? Because you don't know what the world would look like if they had the right answer, do you? No. Enabling you to build a UFO or something in your basement. Well, see, this doesn't do any good at all. So, fuck you for that. The truth alone won't be enough to entice mainstream physics to take notice. But isn't that a statement in itself then? I mean, that's a statement in itself, right? Okay, that they are so afraid and so full of shit, that they don't even want to improve their understanding. They don't want to get the right answer. You're basically saying they're all not seeking the truth. I think they do seek that. They just have made excuses for ignoring all of the theories except their own. They honestly don't seem to care less about refining or correcting the record. Well, that's evidence in the record. So, yeah, they didn't even fix the plus and minus thing. Their physical interpretations of mechanisms, as you noted. Yes, it's all stuff I noted. So, but yeah, I don't really care for all this qualified crapola, frankly. Thanks, but no thanks. Predictions about my success or failure, really not that interesting. Alright, I have a question. So this Louisiana guy, I've given you warning after warning. This is the last one though. If you bring up the motherfucking Big Bang one more fucking time, you're blocked, okay? I couldn't give a fucking rat's ass, asshole. I'm not doing cosmology here. I don't give a fuck what started the fucking universe. I know whatever did it didn't have a fucking brain, fuckhead. It wasn't an ant or a hippopotamus or any kind of animal that had a fucking pile of neurology to make some sort of informed decision. It was just a process, shithead, and I just couldn't give a fuck. Because all it really made was 2 + 2 + 2. It made a pretty simple mechanism. 2 kinds of force, 2 kinds of matter, and 2 kinds of interactions. So it's nothing spectacular, shithead. It's not going to be any source of human justification or any of that kind of shit, you dumb fucking bug. I mean, how many fucking times do I have to tell you to stay on the fucking subject of the fucking videos? You don't comment about completely different subjects on the fucking videos, fuckhead. Alright, anyway. I have a question that I put much thought into. Then you've wasted your fucking life, shithead. Alright, people ask about how the universe started. People who are stupid fucking idiots. Only a fucking idiot wastes his time. You spend 10 minutes on the subject and you say, you know what? That's not going to go anywhere at all, is it? I mean, it only happened billions of years ago. There's no evidence of it. It's a simple mechanical system. The small universe is the only universe. So I'm stuck with what? What made an electron? Well, why the fuck do I give a shit? Okay. Big Bang, question mark, etc. Ooh, I'm just so fucking interested. just from observing things around me, it is too far-fetched to think that we have proof staring us in the face. Well, who cares? Call me crazy. No, I'll call you annoying as fuck and stupid. I'll call you stupid and I'll call you annoying. But the universe seems to produce similar patterns. Well, this is all just wee little baby talk, isn't it? Yes. Oh. Yes, there's geometry. There's squares and there's circles. Yeah, and a hexagon is like a square, except it's not. Ooh, so similar. Ugh. All right, so you've been warned. So next step is blockola. All right. Let's see. Okay, you say that it is no rational. Yes, it's no rational to take the square root of -1. I think it's irrational to take the square root of 1, let alone -1. Yes, -1 makes it even more a silly thing to do. Okay, what about complex impedance in electronic circuits? Anything can be understood as being, especially in mathematics, it's just being representations of time and velocity and mass and different variables. The variables are real. And so my argument to you would be 1/2 of a leaf plus 1/2 of a leaf, or times 1/2 of a leaf, shouldn't equal 1/4 of a leaf. Okay, so the whole mathematical thing turns to shit, when you start making fractions, because then fractions go in this opposite direction. It's magnitude in a negative direction automatically, even without the negative signs. And then it gets even more ludicrous when you start putting those negative signs on things and then start doing things like multiplying and other things, because all of a sudden now minus signs disappear. 2 minus things equals a positive thing. There's all kinds of catches. I'm just saying the math is broken, just like in understanding physics. That electricity there isn't some kind of positive and negative. There either is electrons compensating for the protons or there isn't. So you either have a volume of electrons, which means you overwhelm the positive charge and you create a negative charge. Then there's the ground state, which means the negatives and the positives are balanced. And then you have this negative state where you have too few electrons, and therefore the positive ends up being stronger than the negative. So it is kind of a scale. You could say what's the real variable? Is the real variable the number of electrons, or is the real variable some sort of real positive and real negative? I'm just saying it just gets... once you open this irrational door, I don't think you go anywhere good. Okay, I think it just becomes contrived math, and that's my opinion. I think math needs to be fixed in this sense, that everything should be understood as having constants that are whole numbers, that are real things, not portions of something. And that's the problem, is once you make them a portion, then you subject them to this opposite effect, which is wrong, right? I mean, you could argue the square root of 1 should be some kind of fraction. And that if I multiplied those two fractions to each other, I would end up making a smaller number instead of 1. So it doesn't make any fucking sense. Do you understand? It just doesn't make any sense. I see a complete lack of continuity. When multiplication essentially starts making smaller things, then multiplication is broken. Okay. I mean, you're not multiplying something. You're not making more of it, You've broken the chart, the multiplication table, when you start doing it to fractions. And I think that's fundamentally broken math. But whatever, who cares? Believe whatever you want to believe. Think it's fun to have a silly notion that you can square a rudimentary number like 1. Maybe you should do the square root of 0 next, just for fun. Okay. Something that is not clear to me is the dual slit experiment is why most physicists think it implies superposition. Well, they think it implies... Look, he does a bunch of comments to himself. So he basically argues himself. I don't think there's a reason to conclude superposition in the dual slit experiment. Well, I would argue that your assumption that most physicists think it implies superposition what they think it implies is wave functions. And wave functions are, by their very nature, one thing turning into two things, right? In the slit experiment. So it's one thing being in two places at the same time, essentially. And that you have this collapse of the wave function, which means the two things become one thing in one location. So in some sense, that implies superposition, to me. So yes, but it's not the same as entanglement. So I think that's what you meant to say. Physicists think it implies entanglement because maybe that's not what they think. To me, the wave function just gives a probability. Well, whatever. I mean, obviously they know that. That's what Feynman would argue. It doesn't mean the particle exists in those positions at once. Well, it means it if you're going to sit there and think about it as a physical process. There is physics going on, so the thing really does have to be in two places for you to create a wave function that's going to create a probability. So without it, you don't have any mechanism. Then you're just stuck with the idea that the photon magically breaks into two and then randomly goes to a location. And I think that answer is so vacuous and empty and magical that what's the point in it? I mean, Feynman's explanation, God plays dice with the universe. You don't like it? Tough. It's not much of an explanation, frankly. It's not much of a defense. So anyway, the subject really isn't entanglement or superposition. The argument is I've given you a mechanical explanation, and I've pointed out how their explanation is completely inaccurate, that they're selling the two-slit experiment as just propaganda because they're not accurately describing the experiment or accurately describing the math that works, because it's not wave math. So hell with that. Shameful science, common sense. I love your videos. They are fun to watch and they are very educational and disenchanting. I hate all whatever this pile of crap is, so I'll delete it just for that. Alright, off topic, but not a great idea. But do you think there is any real danger with huge accelerators? I don't know. I wouldn't try to have sex with one. But, frankly, there's probably some tricks in the universe. Like, I think there'd probably be tricks like you could create a sticky piece of matter, something that just keeps sucking in more matter and it all just sticks like a neutron star or something that just makes it possible for it to just keep sticking without getting loose or something. And then you could make the whole universe stick, to something. And so there probably is some little tricks out there. Perhaps there are tricks. But I don't think accelerators aren't doing anything all that fancy, right? I mean, they're pumping a zillion watts of energy into something and getting, a few hundred watts out, and it's really just not that, it's not doing anything all that spectacular. What is all this shit? What the hell is all this crap? Oh yeah, this guy's really, forget about it. Okay, so look, you people just can't get the agenda here. I've already explained what a photon is, what it does in the slit experiments. I've done it. It's done. It's finished. It's good. I don't need your new wacky proposal. I don't need it. It doesn't have any purpose. And it's wacky. It's crap. I mean, you're not defending. There's only two things I want to do. I want to defend my theory, and I want to attack their theory, and the inverse. I want to hear defenses of the conventional theory, and I want to hear attacks on mine. This is useless crap. You're made up bullshit. Anyway, I really like the particle model. Well, it's not, yours isn't a particle model because you still have particles doing this for no reason. There's no point in having a particle model if you make the particles capable of doing all of this kind of crap for no reason. Nothing makes them do it. It's useless then. It's not a particle model. It's a fucking angel model. Anyway, but there's some details missing. Says fucking you. I mean, compared to their theory, it's meticulously detailed. You've argued that people are not testing for RF harmonics. Well, it's not. No, I didn't. It's not what I said. It's really not. It's not a harmonic in the sense that it's made out of two smaller waves. So if you take 10 gigahertz wave and a 10 gigahertz wave and they're 1/2 wavelength out of phase, I would argue that the frequency you created is now 20 gigahertz. And if you look for 20 gigahertz, you'll see it in the out of phase condition, but that is not true. Fuck you. Okay. This would have been found even in the early days of radio. How would they find it? It's not that easy to send two in-phase radio signals, technically. You have to separate them by an awful lot of distance, right? So if you do this with lower band, I mean, years ago they couldn't just shoot microwaves around, in the same phase either. So there's a little bit of technical work you have to do, and receiving 20 gigahertz signals is really kind of complicated. It's not like your home radio can do that. Shit. Anyway, it would have been found in the early days of radio. So no, it wouldn't have. You'd have to be looking for it on purpose. It would have been very obvious that there's always harmonics no matter the phase. Well, it does matter the phase. So again, saying no matter the phase is pointless. All right, I think maybe the photons literally make a wave of photons. So we're just back to, you just want to defend wave theory for some dopey reason. So he writes all this crap and then, all for the grand big prize of this stupid image. So again, we're back to, what is this shit? This wavy crap. What it is supposed to be, again, you're back to magnetism and electricity having fields. Doesn't work that way. There's one field, the charge field. That's it. There's no other thing that exists. There's just the forces, the two kinds of force, and they don't do any of this silly crap that doesn't have any explanation, whatever this wave is supposed to represent. And for most physicists, this isn't supposed to be taken as a literal, oh yeah, it's waving. They don't take that literally. They think of it as compression and expansion. Now, the fact that it has huge polarization does make their theory kind of silly, because this expansion and contraction has to take place over thousands of atoms worth of distance. So how could it affect one electron? Yeah, that seems pretty improbable. But anyway, you're just missing the point, frankly. It's on-off pattern, okay? It's not a wave. It's an on and an off and an on and an off and an on and an off. And I've already explained that, and you're not counter-arguing any of that with all of this crap. Below is a crude sketch of a compound wave particle. I'm not really interested in wave particles. That I think satisfies antiphase. I don't think it satisfies anything. It's just mush. And many other observed behavior. The response in the receiving antenna would be a null. Notice that the photons are still there but can't be detected. Yes, because they're out of phase. And the point is that they still, you're still making them out of two different substances. That's why they're blue and orange, right? I mean, if you made them out of the same thing, you could still detect the fact that the humps are still there. Anyway, I think this would also explain why we see antenna polarization. No, you see antenna polarization because it takes time for electricity to get through the antenna. And that's the only reason. And obviously, as the antenna is producing the signal, the antenna produces the signal in dimensions. And if I change the orientation of the dimensions, the energy is going in a different way than it's going the other way. So it's kind of obvious. But anyway, there's just no point. We've already there's nothing complicated. We don't need to explain antenna polarization because it's so obvious. And my argument is that matter is also an antenna. A row of atoms is an antenna, and the electricity goes through the row of atoms, and it deforms the atoms, and the deformation of the atoms is exactly what's creating the photon. So I already explained this. You're not counter-arguing anything I've already stated. You're just pretending that somehow I didn't already explain it. I've already got a theory. I don't need you to provide a new theory. I already have one. Either knock it down, say why it doesn't work, or get out of my way. I'm not here. I'm not seeking your advice on physics. How to think about things, because I already know how to think about them. So it's just, you're just interjecting your whatever it is proposal, and I don't have time. I got enough job debunking conventional physics. What's my reward for debunking your physics? Well, that's right, no reward at all. It's a waste of my time. Sorry. Go do your physics somewhere else, like on your channel. All right. So the other thing I was thinking about was getting into is I have always talked about how I think the real fundamental mechanism is just patterns in the universe, and it's all just made out of these little arrows being in specific places, sort of like field theory, quantum field theory. Just convert the whole thing into just an understanding that there are little portions of space, and in those portions of space there's an arrow, and that arrow is going in a certain direction. All right, and that's the universe. And then you can have places, where there's no arrow. So, you can have space between the little bits of this stuff. And it's just patterns. And so I was thinking of another way of looking at what electrons and protons are, and thinking about it in terms of them being, instead of thinking of them as something that has mass, if you thought of them as ultralights, like they didn't have any mass, and they were in this field of things that do, the force bits, that you'd sort of understand that they could just go wherever they're getting hit. So if something hits it, it goes at the same speed as the force. It just pushes the little airbag right with it. So the force just hits it and moves this thing with it. So this thing ends up in a new location. And the thing that's going to stop it is that another force bit is going to hit it from the other side, and that's going to be the end of that motion that way. And the two will just reflect off of each other. The one force goes one way, the other force reflects and goes the other way. And so all things do is really just herky-jerky their way in space. So something's sitting in space and it's just constantly getting hit in all directions. And it just ends up moving. You could almost argue a Planck distance. Now the only problem with the Planck distance is you could have parts of space that don't have much force in it because the force has been blocked by some object. So there's not any force coming in one direction. Well, that means when one piece of energy is pushing it, it could push it much further because there's no opposing arrow coming. And without an opposing arrow, this thing can keep getting pushed, and so it could go a lot further before it hits the opposing arrow and stops. But so anyway, so this really does kind of work in terms of a momentum thing. So instead of going to the trouble of what I originally proposed, which was, the boat with the seats in it, and the idea the energy jumps in and another piece of energy jumps out. So when one piece goes in, the other piece jumps out. It's really the same thing, it's just a reflection. But you really don't need the seats in the boat, is my point. So you can just get rid of that part and just think of it as it'll keep moving in a direction until there's an opposing force to stop it that equalizes the movement. So it solves a lot of problems. So it's still true that there's two force interactions, the two colors. So if I have a proton and I hit it with electron force, the only thing that changes is the direction it moves. So the bubble moves this way, and I could say the bubble moves this way, and the reflection goes that way, and it stops moving when something hits it from this side. So that's the difference. And then when the same force hits, it just does this reflecting thing. Same force would be this arrow, right? And so it just technically moves it, and you can say it reflects from this location. The new location is where the reflection will actually happen. And so the reflection, but it's still going to just be a reflection, so I can just draw it over here. Because another piece of force is going to hit it from this other side. So anyway, so then that satisfies, this idea would be is that the electron moves at the speed of light to a new location. It moves as fast as the force. So now you can get the idea that if electrons can move that fast and they just jerk. So when they're moving like in an accelerator, they really can't accelerate electrons slowly. You know, they can't make a gun that shoots electrons at 5 miles an hour. They always seem to be going almost the speed of light in accelerators. So I would argue the reason why that's true is because they're really being pushed. So they have a pulse of energy, you know. So the pulse of energy has a certain time to it. And these are really high energy X-rays that are really pushing, if we're going to be honest. That's why they have to put all the shielding around everything. It's because they're shooting a bunch of X-rays, you know, high energy X-rays. And what's really happening is the electron has a X-ray behind it. You know, depending on how long the time the pulse is, will tell you how far the electron will go. And what's happening is there's a bunch of little bits behind the electron. So you could draw the electron like that. And the idea is it moves the speed of light. It gets hit with the energy coming the other way, stops. Then the next bit, now because it moved at the speed of light, all these bits stayed the same distance. But as soon as it stops, then they catch up and this new bit hits. And then it moves. And then it stops, and then this bit hits, and it moves, and then it stops, and then this bit hits, and it moves, and it stops. So it's really this extra energy that pushes it. So you can sort of, the analogy I was using in my own brain, I was thinking of water hoses, but you know the complication is with distance they get weaker. So I was thinking of using bullets instead. So if you were shooting bullets, you know, draw bullets like that, what the hell? And you had two guns, and you just shot bullets. All right, and you had crappiest bullets ever drawn. But anyway, so you have this idea that I have two guns. I'm shooting bullets this way and this way. And I put something in between that reflected bullets. And it just perfectly absorbed the energy, and it moved, depending on which bullet hit it. Well, you get the idea that no matter where I put this thing, it would stay, as long as I have the same number of bullets coming from both sides. So if I put it here, it would just stay there, because there'd be a stream of bullets coming at it at the same rate as the stream is coming this way. It would just stay in that position. And you could also understand that if I had it in, say, this position, and I put one extra bullet in this gun and shot an extra bullet, that, yeah, it would move one bullet's worth, so to speak. Before it ran into the regular stream, it would slow it down, so that's sort of the drag argument. So it would be dragged because it's going into, it's increasing the timing of these bullets by moving towards them. So that would be what will eventually consume the energy. So it'll move one bullet's worth of distance, and then it'll stop, and it'll just stay there. And if I don't change it, by putting another bullet going this way or another bullet going this way, if I just have the same number of bullets continuing, it'll just stay in that new position. So that'll be its new position in the bullet stream. So technically I could have the stream of bullets going into each other. I stick the object here, it stays. I stick the object here, it stays. I stick the object here, it stays. And if I add an extra bullet, it'll move one position. If I put another extra bullet, it'll move one position. And so that's sort of the way to understand. That's what the universe is. I think this is closer and closer and closer to the truth. That's the real mechanism. So you just, everything is moved by the force. It doesn't, no material object moves until you force it to go somewhere, and it can't keep going. So the keep going thing is much more complicated, because that has to do with what happens to the atoms inside of an object. So you have the protons and the electron, and because there is this sideways, you can move something this way by hitting it, or you can move, see, these bullets would all be of the same electron force. If I threw proton bullets at an electron, well, then all the bullets would be going out this way, So it would change the equation sort of dramatically. But anyway, the point is you can make an engine for material objects. So that's why you have to, electrons won't go somewhere in space. You can't shoot an electron into space and make it go thousands and thousands of light years to another planet or something. And the truth is that the only things that can keep going in space have to have this configuration of an electron and a proton, which essentially guarantees, okay, because the green force, okay, makes the proton move this way and this way. So you can sort of understand that it reflects back to the other electron. So it keeps bouncing through the proton and hitting the electrons. So one piece of energy just gets trapped and just keeps doing this back and forth thing. So it keeps hitting electrons this way, technically. You know, they're hitting them this way, but technically that will end up being just this way. It has a component in this direction, obviously. And the proton's just going to be moving this way. So the proton's not moving away from the electrons, it's moving up and down. And by converting the energy into this other dimension, the proton doesn't produce any drag on the two electrons, and the electrons are allowed to move this way, and as they move this way, they drag the proton along with them. So that essentially becomes the engine to keep a material object moving. So when you accelerate something, what you're really doing is pushing energy into this reflection and perpetuating the reflection. Alright, well that's enough, I think. So just some more draft thinking on the subject, and so I think that's like I said, it's not a dramatic departure from the old theory. It just makes it even simpler and easier to explain. So that's to my advantage, I'd say, and it makes even more explicit my statement that matter has to be forced. That is, the electrons and protons never move unless a force actually forces them to move. And so if you want an electron to move from here to here, a far distance, then you have to hit him with a bunch of energy. So I would argue in accelerators, they have to keep re-accelerating the electron in linear accelerators because they won't keep going. So they have to keep accelerating, re-accelerating. You have to keep hitting them with more streams of energy to keep pushing them. Because as soon as they stop pushing them, they don't go anywhere. They run out of gas. They run out of distance because the ray length is only so long. So they have to increase the pulses, the length of time of the pulse, which means they have to increase the length of the rays of energy to increase the distance that the electron will travel. And yeah, that's enough. And so the reason why it's a little bit slower than the speed of light is obviously it's doing the stopping thing. Every now and then it stops, so it's a little less than the speed of light because the thing is moving and then it stops and then it's moving and then it stops and moving and stops. Right. Alright. So I think that's enough for now. And the only reason why we can't make an electron go 5 miles an hour is that we can't create pulses small enough. You have to create really tiny rays of energy, really small length X-rays, to be able to push an electron and then just let it stop for a while and then push it and then stop it for a while and then push it and stop for a while. To have the illusion of 5 miles an hour means you have to have very long stops. And so your pulses have to be very tiny and very rapid. You have to have frequency in your frequency, so to speak. You have to have your frequency at a very high frequency. It's like you're sending 10 gigahertz at a 5 gigahertz frequency. So you have to apply more than one frequency to the frequency, something like that. It's like light flickering. You can have 60 cycles, and as soon as you get up to 60 cycles, we don't see it flicker anymore. You get a little higher than that, 100 would be even better. You don't see any flicker. But to move an electron, you need these little pulses, and you need a long time for them to rest. So you have to put a low frequency in. You have to put another frequency in. It can't be that low because to move it, you have to have a really high frequency. But anyway, never mind. I don't want to get into too much detail at this point. So anyway, I've done my job here, I think. Okay, so I'm just gonna, this negative number conversation. I don't know if it's, well, whatever. I'll let other people argue with it if they want to. Alright, so the off-topic thing I already dealt with, so we'll just say goodbye to that. Alright, so till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. So again, we need a physicist somewhere that will be willing to be interrogated. And just haven't found one yet. Cowards. Alright, so that's all. Yep, that's it. Yeah, we can just end it there.